Jay here for Stretford, Paddock. This is the Tier 1 Transfer Podcast. Joining me, as always, is my trusty colleague, Ronaldo Brown.
I always get a little touchy when you say always, because there's been a few times you've done it without me.
I'm not right. For starters, there has never, ever been this podcast that I've not invited you on. There's just been times when you've been at the barbers, or you've been, I don't know, at the Times for the week, doing a bit of work placement, or whatever it is you've been doing. You're always invited. Someone else who's always invited as well is Laurie Whitwell from The Athletic. How are you, brother?
Hi guys, I'm good.
Yes, this is like the strangest podcast we've done, because we're in San Diego, aren't we, in front of a swimming pool, as you can see.
Who would have thought
The sun's just come out.
The sun's just come out, yeah.
Who would have thought Tier 1 would have got here, though?
I know, yeah,
When we
Tier
first
1,
started it.
live from, well, not live, but in San Diego. Laurie, it's always a pleasure chatting to you. You've obviously been covering the tour. Are you getting on with it? How's everything going?
It's been good.
Yeah.
East Coast to West Coast with a little Houston leg in the middle of it. Just got back from there today.
Yeah, same as.
Yeah, hot, right?
Yeah, it was roasted. Yeah, I flew into Dallas as well and drove from Dallas to Houston. It's a long story. We don't need to go into it.
You don't want to tell everybody why?
Yeah.
All right, we're amongst friends. I am a bit of a JFK aficionado, right? I wanted to see where he got shot. I know it's a bit morbid.
A bit
but I
morbid.
did.
Oh, yeah.
Site of historical relevance.
Yeah, but unfortunately, because of circumstances out of my control, the car rental issue, I didn't have enough time.
So you just added an extra 3 hours
I
onto your
added an extra
journey?
4 hours onto my journey for no reason whatsoever. So, but I did get to interview Wes Brown when we got to the ground, so it's all good. Laurie, I just want to talk to you a little bit about Andre Onana. You did a piece not so long ago about him. Obviously, the transfers happened. We just saw his debut for Manchester United against Real Madrid. Me and you were just chatting a minute ago about how different it felt seeing a goalkeeper for United on the halfway line for a lot of the time. What have you made of? Just go back to the deal itself. What did you make of that deal? Do you think that United got a good deal there? Because there was a bit of back and forth between ourselves and Inter Milan, and it seemed like the add-ons got the deal over the line from what I read.
Yeah, I think that's obviously how United want to do these kind of deals. You look at the Mason Mount one, which, if that gets realised, United will be buzzing, because it'll mean that, he's played a lot and they've won big trophies. I think it's a similar situation with Andre Onana. It felt like there was a kind of a desire in certain parts to hurry that deal along, when actually it was getting to a negotiation stage where it took a bit of talks to get through. It wasn't necessarily this is going to be the price and let's do it. It took several rounds of conversations, and eventually, even at the very end, it got to the finer points of how much United were going to pay at different stages. Took a little bit of time, because keep coming back to it, but the financial fair play aspect, United are looking at every single million, 2 million, and kind of thinking, can we put that through the financial sausage machine and make it work? But I think ultimately they've got a good deal. When you look at, he's 27, he's exactly the kind of player that Erik ten Hag wants. He obviously knows him. He transforms what United can do in terms of playing out from the back, and that then I think sets up everybody else further up the pitch. So I think that's actually a good price for him. I know obviously he was free last summer. Could United have looked at him then? But at that time, David De Gea had the gloves. It wasn't a position that United were necessarily looking at totally. Ten Hag wanted a 1.5, he was telling people, so someone that could kind of come in, challenge De Gea a little bit, but not be absolutely guaranteed to be a starter. So that kind of just affected what they could do in the transfer market. And clearly, centre back, right winger, there were other positions. Midfield clearly was the big one last summer, really. So I can see why perhaps that didn't happen. So in reflection on that, he had long-term contract, Onana, so to get him for the price they got him for, I think is decent negotiation.
No, definitely. I'm always quite confused when it comes to the whole FFP and kind of how it works. Obviously, I found out when Alanga was transferred to Nottingham Forest, apparently his transfer, because he was an academy product, does it work out as pure profit or something like that? It's quite technical. But with the whole Onana situation and obviously the De Gea departure, I wanted to actually get your opinion on what you thought about the way United kind of dealt with the end of the De Gea situation, and obviously some people thought it was kind of like he should have got a little bit more respect given, or it might have been a little bit harsh with the way we treated towards the end. But do you think that's the fact that we didn't negotiate in the Onana situation towards the end of it kind of had a little bit of an effect on that? Yeah,
for sure. I think that Erik ten Hag was open to having De Gea again for another season in the springtime. So he'd had a decent season. Obviously, he'd had the sort of terrible start trying to play out from the back at Brentford, and Brighton hadn't gone well. He'd reverted back to type against Liverpool and kind of gone long and gone direct, and it had worked. And I think Ten Hag is a pragmatic manager. He has an ideal style that he'd like to achieve, but at the same time, he knows the realities of his finances. and I think he thought that De Gea was a good presence around the place. He kept saying about his clean sheet record, and he was making really good saves, eye-catching saves. I mean, you can go back over this season. I think Crystal Palace away. I'm trying to think of other saves where you kind of go, wow, that could have been one of his best.
Bournemouth at home, I think, was one.
Right.
Where there was a few. To be
there
fair.
were a few.
You know what I mean? You don't get whatever it was, 16 clean sheets or something without pulling some good saves out.
But then I think what happened, and so I think Ten Hag was thinking, okay, he's improved a little bit. Okay, let's go for it. Let's get a new contract. And they offered him a contract in sort of March time, and he rejected the first one because he thought, yeah, I'm going to take a pay cut. I accept at 375 grand a week. I've done well there for the last few years. Let's rearrange that a little bit. But equally, I don't think he was prepared to drop it by as much as United originally offered him. So they kept talking, kept negotiating, and in that time, his form slipped, didn't it? I mean, away to Sevilla, awful. Away to West Ham, really bad mistake. But then it was the FA Cup final, I think, that changed things, because being there in person and the question being asked of him, is David De Gea definitely going to be your goalkeeper for next season? That was the first time he changed his answer, which was basically, there's ways in which we can progress this team. And that was the hint, I would like a goalkeeper that is comfortable on the ball, can receive it and give it to other players, draw the press on and have that patience and courage to wait for an attacker and then pass it around them. I think at that point he thought, actually, I'm going to make goalkeeper a higher priority than where I have at the moment, and that then changed what United offered David De Gea. They had an outline principle. There's different versions of what happened, whether there was ever a contract actually signed. United absolutely reject that there was, but nonetheless there was an agreement in place for David De Gea to stay on. I think he thought he was going to come back after he went away on his holidays after the FA Cup final, and then it changed. And I think in that week, Ten Hag thought, I can get Andre Onana here, actually. And that was before the Champions League final. Then he goes and stars in the Champions League final, and I think his opinion of that situation was just all more reaffirmed.
Fair enough, that makes...
Contrasting performances in finals towards the end there.
Yeah, what an interesting week, right?
Yeah, it's a shame the way it's ended for David De Gea, but I think, the United fan base will appreciate what he did for us over the 12 years. I've been saying it for a little while, I'm not going to lie. I thought he'd been off the boil and not been the same player since almost the 2018 World Cup. There was just little mistakes kept creeping in, and he, obviously under Ten Hag, those came to the forefront when he was trying to play out from the back. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the encounter you had with Avram Glazer, because that went everywhere. It was viral. You spoke about it. I think other reporters were covering it. Just what happened there? Because you tried to talk to him and he gave you a quick answer, but you managed to at least speak to him, which is more than anyone else did.
Yeah, it's a funny one. We'd heard that he was going to be... Well, we heard that he was at training at Pingree School in New Jersey, which is where United have been based. And then, you kind of realise, okay, if he's at training, he's going to be at the game. He's been to the FA Cup final, he's been to the Carabao Cup final, he's been to the Women's FA Cup final. He's showing his presence around, which I think is interesting in its own right. Like, he was at Brighton at home, first game of the season, last season in the Premier League. But it's been such a long while whilst the takeover had been, being discussed and the sale, what's going to happen there, and then he turns up at the end of the season, and then he's here again. So I don't know if we're reading too much into that, but it feels like he's showing himself. Certainly, does he really want to sell the club? That's the kind of reading you get from it.
Okay.
So anyway, we're in the mix zone, aren't we? And the players are coming past, and then all of a sudden, someone goes, "Oh, there's Avram." So he's walking past. And the kind of first instinct is to kind of get a quick video of it to show people, and then you're thinking, actually, that we need to go speak to him. These chances don't come around very often at all. Obviously, I went to Washington DC on a different work trip, but I thought, well, Joel Gazer lives here for certain times. Tried to knock on his door, he wasn't in that day, so I thought, well, here's Avram right here. I'll try and speak to him. Managed to sort of catch up with him, and I got a little bit lucky because I think he was sort of waiting for somebody else, and I managed to kind of introduce myself and just asked him about the takeover, what's happening. That's the big question that everyone wants to know, right? And he just said, I'm just here to enjoy the game, which I think is a stock answer that he's got. I'm trying to think when he said that last. I think Adam Leventhal...
nice and scripted.
That's it.
Yeah.
I think he knew.
He has said that before, hasn't he? I think
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I think Adam Leventhal got him after the World Cup, another colleague of mine at The Athletic, and I think he said the same thing then. And so clearly that's his stock answer, which is fine. He's at the game. He does just want to watch the game, I suppose, and that's the way to easily deflect things. I did try and ask a follow-up question on the reported split. This is kind of something that we've been told amongst the siblings as to what to do with the club, whether to sell it, whether to keep hold of it. Avram and Joel seem more attached to it. The other four siblings would like to sell, from what we're told. But yeah, he'd done his answer and then he walked off. So, but he didn't it was a perfectly fine exchange. You know, I've got no qualms with that, but I feel like you have to try and at least ask the question in those moments.
100% fair play to you for at least speaking to him, because as you know, as us United fans are frustrated with, you never get anything out of him. You never see them. You never hear from them. So okay, he don't give you much of an answer, but at least you managed to speak to him, which is better than nothing.
You'd want an owner to, if they do have affection for the club, as he says he does, speak to the fans. And maybe he's past that point. He's thought he's 18, 19 years.
Almost too far gone, do you feel like?
But you know, come on. I think the fans would deserve something like that.
I think you're right, and I think you're right. It's too far gone. I think if he did, I don't think there's any way communication now changes the feeling.
Changes absolutely nothing.
You know, I think the just before the Super League might have been the last chance. Maybe even then it's probably too far. But now I think that even if he was to have an open dialogue with us every week, everyone would still want him gone.
Yeah, it's getting quite concerning though at the moment in terms of the takeover, because throughout the takeover saga, I feel like I've constantly heard this buzzword: deadline, deadline, deadline. And it just seems like that's disappeared. Like, it doesn't seem to be an end goal in sight. Realistically, could they just wait until December, January? Could they? It could basically be. They can do what they want, really. But I feel like, is there a situation where they could have? Because they've not ever actually outright said that they are going to sell the club.
Yep.
So I think that might work in their favour. But surely they can't drag it on this long and end up staying. It would feel like almost unrepairable.
They, as you say, Ronaldo, they set this out as a strategic alternative, and sale was one of the words in that. So everyone interpreted that as the club's up for sale, which it is. You know, if the price had been met that they want, but it seems like it hasn't, because if it had, they would, you presume, have accepted it. They can't have sort of met the asking price, Sheikh Jassim's bid or Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid, and then the Glazers kind of moved the goalpost. I wouldn't have thought. It's their asset, so they could technically, keep it going for as long as they like. I do think, I speak to some people and they say that the New York Stock Exchange, should they not step in and sort of say this has to actually end? You have to have some clarity, because the stocks are being traded on the New York Stock Exchange, yet it's a private sale almost, because you've got these 6 siblings that have the control. So it's this kind of strange dichotomy between the two things, and actually that's not right in when you're trading shares on something. But I don't know. Maybe that's just people grumbling. So actually, the Glazers can sort of do what they want in this situation. Clearly, for the betterment of the club, you would want some clarity there. I suppose you would also argue, though, that they have made transfers whilst the club's been up for sale. I know that everyone would like it to be a case of, someone wipes the debt and United have, not a blank cheque, but at least are able to spend their own money as they want. Because clearly the club is in huge debt, and they really would spend, if they were going to significant degrees, on the revolving credit facility that they've got, which is to the tune of £300 million they can dip into. But when you speak to senior people at United, they say that cash isn't the issue really, or credit isn't the issue. It's this financial fair play situation where they do have to just tweak things to make sure they fall into line. And obviously they got wrapped on the knuckles, didn't they, by UEFA, €300,000 fine for breaching the regulations in 21-22. I think for 22-23 the more significant set of rules is by the Premier League, so that's one that they're currently looking at to make sure that they can fall into line. Although they can make sales in the winter window to come, within that, so they could potentially make a signing in this window and then make a sale in January that actually then for the whole year, because it's totted up in March basically, so that could sort of bring it back level. But long-winded answer, sorry Ronaldo, but I think it could. It's their asset, as much as it might pain people to know that, I think it is up to them really.
The longer it goes on, the more worried I get. That's the short and long of it all. But as we all know, it is smooth sack summer. Yes, it's that time again when you need to look after down below and join the 8 million men worldwide who choose Manscaped for their grooming. Check out the link in the description using the code Paddock Tour, because your balls will thank you. With Manscaped, we have got the Performance Package 4.0. We've got the shears. We've got the Boxer Briefs. We've got the Crop Reviver. We've got the Crop Toner. We've got the Lawnmower 4.0 with the 7,000 RPM and the on-off multifunctional switch, because no one likes it when you turn something on and you can't get it off again. Well, this is multifunctional, Ronaldo, yeah? And it's in your shed travel bag. It's all there for you, okay? You got free shipping. You got 20% off. What more do you want? Thank you. Nothing. It's there. Check out the link in the description. Your balls will thank you this summer. You will have smooth sack summer, as smooth as Avram Glazer's bald head. Sorry to put that image in your head anyway. Go and check out the link in the description. 20% off and free shipping. Thank you to Manscaped for sponsoring this podcast.
Do you want to say your own head?
Listen,
Gets enough attention already, doesn't it?
My head's nice and shiny for different reasons.
So, Laurie, you've recently written a very, very, very well-written piece on Angel Gomes.
You have to
Brought
say
a little
that.
glittery, right? A player that we all thought would have a really, really bright future at United. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, it was an interview that we set up after he won the under-21s with England, the European Championships, I should say. He'd already won the under-17 World Cup with England as well, so he's like one of the only 3 players, I think, that's done both of them. Morgan Gibbs-White and Emile Smith-Rowe are the other 2. And I just thought that he's always actually been someone that I've wanted to interview from United, because I started covering United when he was coming through, and you hear rave reviews about him as a highly skilled technician. Did he have enough for United? What was the situation there? Because he left on a free. It's a shame when something like that happens. So what was the story there? So I was really excited to interview him, and actually he exceeded my expectations. Really, really sharp, very intelligent guy, very kind as well. Just a nice person to be around. And he said some really interesting things about England, how they'd won both these tournaments and what it sort of took, and also the technical aspects to it and the tactical aspects. He said that he'd speak to Lee Carsley, who's the under-21s manager, and I saw an interview where Carsley had said that Angel Gomes could be a coach, and he's only 22 and he's already thinking that way. And I sort of said, what does he mean by that? And it's just he says that he looks at football quite analytically. He's a football nerd, he says, so he tries to work out pressing schemes and things like that when he's watching a game just sat at home. And I was like, do you tell people next to you on the sofa when you like that? He's like, no, I'll keep it to myself. I know that can be annoying, but I think it shone out how much he loves the game. And then we did get into United as well and what happened there. And you could tell that it really did hurt that he'd had to leave, because he'd been there since he was 6. He made his debut at 16, and I can't remember the exact number of days it was, but he was the second youngest person to ever make his debut for United after Duncan Edwards in 1953. So that's a big, length of time. Yet he didn't, go on to the first team. And so sort of why did that happen? And he felt that he wasn't given enough opportunity, and that's why he went to Lille in France. He had a loan at Boavista in that first season, and then has had 2 good seasons at Lille. He's played 3 seasons, consistently each season, so I think you have to say it's worked out for him. I know he's not at Manchester United right now, but the way that he's gone about it with real class, I would say, and shone in Portugal and France, what's next for him? I think it's really exciting to ask that question. But yeah, he went into quite a lot of detail about his time at United as well. So yeah, if anyone has a spare moment, check it out. But I just came away from it thinking, yeah, a good guy and a really smart one too.
Yeah, because I remember a few years ago we did like a pre-season or a season preview, and we were all raving about Angel Gomes, because it was a similar time. I think there was Tahith Chong, there was Gomes, there was 1 or 2 others, and we all sort of agreed Gomes had something there. You could see he was brilliant on the ball.
Has a little spark, doesn't he? I feel like he's moulded himself. He's moulded himself recently into a bit of a deep lying playmaker, hasn't he? Which is very interesting.
Was there any bitterness there? Do you feel?
No bitterness.
Just like
maybe maybe a bit of sadness. I think
not because I'm not saying he's a bitter person, but it looked like it was going to happen for him, and then his opportunity just went away. And there were some people that thought, if he didn't obviously, like you said, been given a bit more opportunity, maybe another loan move, maybe just stuck with him a little bit more. There was a player there we could have used.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I'm sure, will say, well, he wasn't ready for me to put into that situation. I'm trying to think, though, the 1920 season, it was when you had Andreas Pereira as number 10, and United were really struggling to create chances, and then Bruno came in. I mean, I thought a really funny bit, which is what I started the interview with when I wrote it, was that Bruno texted him after England beat Portugal in the 21s in the quarterfinals, just a load of angry emojis. And I love that no hi, no congratulations, just loads of angry emojis. He obviously replied with like a load of laughy cry faces, so they knew each other for that 6-month period. And obviously Angel Gomes has got sort of Portuguese heritage, so I think there's and he speaks Portuguese, so there's a bit of a bond there. I don't think bitterness or I think sadness and just the way he was speaking. He was really low. He said after he left United, it was like a really big decision for him to go and say, actually, I'm going to leave this academy and then try and make myself a name sort of elsewhere, a reputation, a career in the game elsewhere. But it takes a lot to do that. I think he could have stuck around. They offered him a contract, so he could have gone for it, but he wanted to play more regularly. So hats off to him.
No, definitely.
I feel like a better word for it might have been, he might have a chip on his shoulder instead. I feel like that's a little bit better than bitterness. I feel like there's nothing wrong with being disappointed that you didn't make it a club that you want to, and you
Is
carry
chip on your shoulder not the same as being a bitter?
Nah, I feel like.
Do you not think?
Nah,
I think even worse.
I don't think it's worse. I don't think it's worse. I think
You're the expert. Is chip on your shoulder worse than bitterness?
I think in the way Ronaldo's saying it is just a chip on your shoulder because you want
motivation.
to prove people wrong.
Yeah,
I think he did want to
motivation
prove people wrong.
Right,
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that
Right, all right.
in a sport like this.
I'm not going to argue with you. We want to talk about transfers, obviously, Laurie. The big one recently has been Rasmus Hojlund. It looks like there's something happening there, a little bit of movement, certainly more movement than is likely to happen with Harry Kane or any other striker. What's the latest from your point of view from Rasmus Hojlund? Do you see this happening? Do you see a deal getting over the line? Maybe it's one of those where the add-ons, like we saw with Onana, could push it towards happening?
Yeah, there's certainly a hope that it gets done amongst Manchester United staff before the start of the season. So I think that's a positive. You look at the way that Erik ten Hag's been speaking. He's been very open about needing a striker. He said absolutely in answer to a question about does a blank against Real Madrid sort of show why you're after a striker. So, clearly he's not shying away from that. And Rasmus Hojlund is the one that they've been pursuing. They've made a verbal offer for him. I think it was €50 million plus €10 million. United are saying that they don't want to go above £60 million. I think so. That offer that they've currently made is a little bit under that, I think, if my exchange rate is right. PSG have made an offer as well, though.
Great.
Yeah, so
that's what we want. Let's get in a bidding war with them. I think the skin actually. They
don't want to get in a bidding war either, but they equally like the player, so that's something just to consider. But from what you hear, I think Hojlund would really like to join Manchester United, so United have got that in their favour. And yeah, let's see how it goes. But Atalanta do want a lot of money again, from what I hear. Whether that it eventually meets what United are after, it seems a very similar situation with Inter and with Chelsea, to be honest. They got both those players ultimately. Do the numbers work to get Hojlund as well? I think they need a striker, obviously, and ten Hag will be pushing for one.
Yeah, because another concern about the numbers, obviously you mentioned FFP earlier, is if we get Hojlund through the door for whatever we pay for him, there's obviously been a link to Sofia and Amrabat as well, and apparently that's dependent on sales. But who do you feel like is the most likely sale for that to occur? Would it have to be a midfield area? Could it be a defender, Harry Maguire?
I think if Amrabat comes in, you probably would look a midfielder would make sense. Fred is not on this tour. I know Fulham have been interested in him. I think United set a price at like 20 million for him, which with the year left on his contract, I think he's 30 now. I'm sure they'd be open to negotiation on that. But Fred seems to be the one that I think would possibly go. Scott McTominay's attracted interest from West Ham. But I don't know, I kind of feel like, and maybe this is my sort of allegiance to academy players coming through a little bit, but I think you need a few scattered amongst your squad to kind of keep that going. And certainly ten Hag, has spoken highly of him. Maguire, a sale might be difficult there just because his wages, are significant. So the club would have to pay a transfer fee and then also match sort of good wages. There'd probably have to be a negotiation with him personally from United to offset any loss there. I think overall probably Fred is the one that I'd most anticipate going.
Just on the Amrabat topic, do you see anything happening there? Because there's some reports, I was looking at the reports coming out that this is a done deal, it's happening, and then when I sort of scratch beneath the surface,
sometimes things get lost in translation. I think I saw that it was like total agreement, and I think that looked like it was like transfer fee and everything.
Translation now.
During the player and his agent, they both want him to go to United.
Well, there we go.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's like, okay, he's up for it.
Yeah.
But United have got to put up the money. Do you think that one could end up happening? Because I know, obviously, Hojlund, from what we gather, from what you've said, and from what the managers indicated, is the priority, or at least the striker's priority. Amrabat, you think, is further down the line, but we do need another midfielder in that position, don't we?
Yeah, well, you look at Kobe Mainoo. I think that was really sad. You touched on it before we started recording, didn't you?
Yeah.
That just set the tone a little bit for the Real Madrid game, getting injured so early, because he looked really impressive against Arsenal, and you sort of wondered whether, actually, does his emergence and the fact that, from what we hear, he'll be around the first team, he's not going out on loan next season, does that then negate the need for someone like an Amrabat? But yeah, we'll see how long that injury's out for. I think Amrabat, if it happens, would be late in the window when United have maybe done a bit of horse trading and they're thinking, actually, let's push the button on this one.
Did you see when Mainoo walked past Jude Bellingham and Jude Bellingham stopped and chatted to him?
Oh, I didn't see that. I saw he had the protective boot on his foot.
Yeah,
what was that like?
I'm pretty sure he went past and he just said something to him. I'm pretty sure. Jude Bellingham spoke really well.
He's
as
a
well.
classic
He
guy.
annoyed me. He annoyed me how well he spoke, how well he played.
I literally can't believe
it.
I mentioned to Steve yesterday, I have a mate, D'Amico Dehaney, who played for Huddersfield, and he played against Jude Bellingham when he was 16 in the Championship, and he said he's never seen anything like it.
So he could tell at that age.
He could tell at that age. Apparently, at that age, at 16, for Birmingham, he was their best player. He was their leader. And he just ran the whole game at 16 in the Championship. Unbelievable.
Clubs were trying to get him. I mean, United knew about him obviously even before he went to Dortmund. There was, United were trying to get him. I know obviously that was the big push in 2020. Liverpool knew about him, but he wanted to stay at Birmingham. He's from there, and I think they felt a certain loyalty to the club. And then obviously they've got the deal that they wanted to go to Dortmund, and then they've got the deal that they wanted to go to Real Madrid. You can't really fault the way he's progressed his career, and he speaks so well. It is frightening how calm he is in that situation.
Even the Martinez thing he played down, did he?
Yeah,
So really cool. Do you know what I mean? He's got it all.
Respect.
Do you know what I mean?
And he plays for Real Madrid for the next however long.
Well, he's a loser then, isn't he?
Yeah,
what pathetic. He's going to regret that one.
How boring is that?
Laurie, it's always a pleasure chatting to
Cheers
you.
for having me.
Thanks for coming on, especially when you could be out in that pool or sunning yourself on the beach. I know you've got a lot of articles to write as well. We know your time is precious. Make sure you go and check out Laurie Whitwell on The Athletic. Loads of great articles on there, including that interview with Angel Gomes. Ronnie, where can people find you?
They can find me on the... I can't even say Bird app anymore.
Yeah, you say the Bird app. It's not. It's the X
it's
app
the
now,
X
isn't
app
it?
now.
Don't like that.
I don't like it.
I'm not.
It felt so right. Twitter, it makes sense. Birds tweeting.
Yeah, Twitter and all that. But now it's it's X. Find him on the X app.
You
know where to find me as well, Jay Martin. This has been a Tier 1 transfer podcast. Big thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring as well. Go and check out the link in the description. 20% off and free shipping. Don't forget as well to subscribe. So Stretford Paddock want to get to 800,000 subscribers. With your support, we can do it. This has been a Tier 1 Transfer Podcast with Laurie Whitwell and, of course, Ronaldo Brown and me, Jay Martin. Thanks for watching.